Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We are really happy to share with you the advancements in the SV program during the last couple of months. In particular, we wanted to discuss the extent of the node hosting program, and what is most important, the launch of the capability for EVP members and institutions to test use case applications and integrate to the SV network. We will explain as well the methodology for doing so. The main points that we wanted to cover today are: we'll give you an update on the SV roadmap and use cases, an update on the EBSI version 1 network. We will launch the integration testing. We will show the integration documentation, and we will propose some actions for the member states. Okay, so where are we? We are at the end of the Q1, and in the upcoming weeks, we will be delivering a stable API and a future-proof architecture. After that, we will work together towards the selection of the new use cases by the end of Q2. EBSI version 2 will contain all the features that were reported by the conveners during the quarterly meeting as not implemented, alongside will be implemented by Q1 2021, with the new use cases that will be selected at the end of Q2 2020. EBSI version 2 Plus will contain anything that will be coming in the next year.
Thanks to the collaboration with the use case conveners, we've been able to identify all the features that are prioritized under version 1 and version 2 for each use case. We're in a position of basically prioritizing all the features that will be released as part of V1 by the end of April, and by the end of quarter 1 2021 as part of V2. The features that fall under V1 correspond to the stabilized infrastructure that will be available by the 31st of April, and V2 corresponds to all the features that will be available in the first quarter of 2021. Along with meeting all the conveners and prioritizing all the features, we have also come up with a new way of working, a new process for core platform product development, which from an end to the other will involve the conveners and help them propose, select, and groom the new use cases and the new features, which we will, along with agile methodologies, analyze at functional level, break down into technical tasks, run through a whole series of architecture, governance, security, and development assessments in order to meet the conveners and deliver them a clear roadmap of what will be implemented in the last phase of the workflow. To finish the workflow, all the conveners will be invited to accept the features, and the accepted ones will be released and made available for all stakeholders to input real data. As part of the next steps, basically, we have started meeting with conveners, starting with diplomas conveners earlier in March. We've been able to identify the priority features and are planning on doing the same with the next conveners of the notarization and CEF use cases.
One of the important tracks this year will be the establishment of the decentralized technical governance of the EBSI platform. To do this work, we have made a call for EBP members on the technical group to join us, and 8 of them have so far requested participation in that work stream. We will be kicking that off on the 2nd of April and take that forward for the rest of the year, intending to design and build the technical governance of the platform such that it can be decentralized under EBP and EU governance. Alongside that work, the protocol research work is now being able to be focused on. It started in the previous work stream, however, was deprioritized due to the work on version 1. Now we have started to analyze the 3 submitted protocols, reaching out to each of their owners, and we are also understanding what are the requirements that would drive further protocols. So the short-term deliverables and in terms of documentation, in terms of code, are as follows. So there is a new Get Started wiki that we'll explain a little later, that will be published both to the EBP and to the authorized user community. Following that, the whole wiki will be redone such that there is not only cleanup, but also the additional work that has gone on in detailing both functional and technical elements and legal, etc., are clear to all the EBP members, as well as keeping the audit trail of all the interactions. Beyond that, the functional documentation that was delivered for V1 will also then be enhanced and delivered within the simplified wiki. The new architecture will be explained today to you, as well as the API documentation that is being delivered today is a key element of the integration facility to EBSI. Further down the line at the end of April, we'll be delivering the API code itself so that integrations may start. Following that, the CEF building block open source code will be published publicly, globally, such that the market can look and be inspired and also help develop the ecosystem. There is also the publication of the GDPR assessment from the legal and social economic team, and the new use cases that will be developed potentially for version 2 will be later brought out in the June timeframe.
So update on the EBSI V1 network. So we have 20 nodes that have been requested by EBP members institution, and it represents 14 EBP members. We are proud to say you that we have already 6 nodes connected from day 1 on the network. It was in February. We are busy in March and April connecting 8 additional nodes, and we are in preparation phase to add 6 nodes during Q2 and Q3 2020. In addition of that, we have the 6 commission nodes set up initially to boot the networks, which means in total, we will have 20 BP nodes plus 6 nodes of the commission, so 26 nodes for the test nets is planned for end of 2020.
Okay, then you have the launch of the EBSI integration testing, the service desk and the EBSI user community. So for the service desk, you have a tool where you can raise all your issues, requests, and questions about the EBSI project. We are always available between the normal commission days, between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. We also have a 24-hour standby service for all critical and urgent incidents. This is only available by phone. Next, we have the user community. You can take contact. Sorry. Next to the service desk tool, we also have a user community. For now, this is created for the members of the EBP. Later on, it is the purpose to create the largest blockchain community. The main purpose of this community is to help, share feedback and experience with your fellow members. So to point out the differences between the service desk tool and the user community, the user community cannot be used to raise issues, requests, and questions to the IT department. For this, you can use the service desk tool. The purpose of the user community is strictly for helping and sharing between the members.
So the integration testing facility can now be launched.
So we have an updated vision of the architecture. On the left side of the slide, you have the initial conceptual view of the EBSI architecture. We have revisited this architecture view essentially after having played with implementation. We have revisited regarding its clarity, its compliancy with standard. And so this is an exercise that has been done essentially in February and March. And on the right side, you have this new view updated of the architecture. So an important point is we have all the services that were committed in V1 in the initial conceptual architecture are still well present. We have made some renaming essentially for granularity or self-explanation of the services. On the right side, this architecture view is a service layer architecture view. Every white box is representing a service. In orange, you have category of service, which is simply a collection of services that have the same affinity. And you will recognize the 5 layers of the architecture. So this is a model, this is a stack of services. You see at the bottom, you have the infrastructure layer where you will find, as an example, the host images that member states install on their nodes, containers. The infrastructure layers is offering services to the layer above it. So in blue, you have the chain and storage layer. Inside that layer, we have 3 categories of services: smart contracts, pluggable protocols, and off-chain storage. As an example, on the pluggable protocol services, you recognize the white box ledger protocols. Inside of it, today, we have implemented Bezu and Fabric ledgers. And if I take the other example on the right, so the off-chain storage collection of services, we have implemented in the demonstrator distributed storage services. And in gray box, those are services coming in the next version, like private storage or external storage in the off-chain storage collection. Then above, so the chain and storage is offering services to the upper layer. Here, this is an essential layer. This is the core layer and infrastructure. In the previous conceptual architecture, it was 2 color, the green and the gray color. We have fusion those 2 layers. Here, those are the interfaces of the EBSI platform to the consumer. So you will find here all the APIs we will offer to consumer of the EBSI platform. We have here 4 categories of, 4 collection of services. Identity first. So inside of it, you will find, as an example, verifiable presentation API, verifiable credentials, so from CEF, Identity Hub also for storing credential, DITS API for resolving decentralized identity to a DITS document. We have also the AI DAS Bridge API in charge of sealing credential with high level of assurance. We have also the Trusted Issuer Registry, which is a register of EBSI application that are trusted on the EBSI platform. And EBSI.o, this is more libraries. Then you have the wallet API. You have also the API Security Management Group of Service. So here you have the reverse proxy service, which is an essential one because it's protecting the access to all those core APIs from the external world or from internet. You have also the Trusted App Registry. Oh, sorry, I made a mix on the other side. Here it's the Trusted App Registry is the register of application trusted on EBSI, and on identity it was the Trusted Issuer, so the register of issuer that are authorized to generate and sign a credential. Then on right side, an important part also of the core services, this is the integration API group of services. You have the Ledger API. Here is the access to all read and write operation to lower layer protocol like Bezu and Fabric. You can reach them through REST HTTP services, which is the Ledger API. You have the storage API, the same principle. To reach the off-chain storage of the lower layer, we expose the service through API, which is the storage API. And then the timestamp API for the notary of a document, so the anchoring on the ledger of the hash of a document, so specifically used by the notary use case. On top of it, we have some common application. So you have seen it on the demonstrator. We have developed it, the EBSI wallet web client. And in the future, in gray, we will also have an implementation reference for native mobile application. Other services in blockchain monitoring, we have a block explorer, which will enable you to have a view on the transaction down on the block that have been validated. And then we have the integration tools services in the common layer. Today we have the API catalog. So this is a web interface where you will see all the API signature. So we publish there the first Swagger definition of the API from the core service interface, so the lower below it, the layer below it. So those 4 layers are the foundation of every EBSI node. On top of it, so there is a separation, there is the use case layer. So this is really the business application, which are consuming all the EBSI services, develop it and deploy it on the stack model, just explain it. It's outside the node. You see we will have in the future national use case application that will consume those EBSI services, cross-border application. Today we have already the ECA notary, so from the Court of Auditor, that are using as an example the timestamp API from the core service layer. And then on the right side, this is the demonstrator for the EVA user journey, which is a web application implemented all the 4 use cases. Another important part is that we have, if you see this model, we have developed a model where you see in the core service generic services which will be consumed by the use cases. It's in the future, we are busy making an update on the wiki pages, and you will be able to have a better view for each use cases which generic services from EBSI is used. So this is more or less the update on this architecture view.
So the new architecture enables specifically those core services to be made available to any integrating application. So there's a series of documents that enable member states and EU institutions and their developing partners to develop applications against EBSI. So starting on the left, as you're aware, there's the CEF digital website that has a certain level of high-level information and is going to be enhanced with this integration service as well. Being published at the same time now is a new section to the internal wiki, actually to the EBP user community as well, which is a section specifically about getting started with integrating and connecting to EBSI. So this will be a separate section that has titles such as what is EBSI, the initial use case functional specifications. So what were those functional specifications that were used in order to design and build the core infrastructure? The architecture that has just been described, all the way to the APIs, and then the call to action of how to get going, as was described earlier in the support and community areas. Going back, we can see that we have the internal wiki section that, again, as described earlier in the deliverables plan, is a separate section to the reorganization of the wiki. Leads into the architecture details that were just described. So each of those layers, service groupings, and services have a description within the new wiki. And then each of those descriptions then lead to the actual interface code. So for example, the swaggers described about the APIs, which we'll see a little later. So another supporting document that is available to you and was requested by members of the EBP is an evangelization deck. This helps to clarify to member states institutions what can EBSI do for them, what benefits are there with the platform, and how can member states evaluate the benefits against any given initiative that they may have. This document is available for you to download, and of course, any questions arising can be addressed to the support team. Further on the supporting documents, coming back to the public documentation, as you know, the CEF digital website is available for distribution to member state institutions who are curious about the blockchain phenomenon and how that can help them in their services. This provides all the information around the services, so including this integration service that we're launching now will be updated there shortly. There's already the connectivity service to test a node implementation. With some of the documentation, there's access to information about the grants programs, and the support team is also accessible directly from the website. So let's understand how we can integrate a use case application to EBSI. We've seen the new architecture or the remodeled architecture. We've seen that there is documentation against that. So what are the methodologies that we can use to integrate to EBSI from an application? So there are two main methodologies. A use case application can either use the core services. So you saw the core services layer that was described, and this includes all the services available from EBSI, but critically includes value-added services on top of the blockchain protocols and the off-chain storage protocols. So on the left is one methodology. To note that the automated integration tools won't be available till 2021. Those will enhance the speed of integration by giving further self-service capabilities to use case developers. However, the core services APIs you've already seen in the architecture and will be described a little bit later. On the other hand, on the right, the other methodology is to simply use the core infrastructure services directly. Now, this does come through the core services APIs. However, what is meant here is that to use directly the protocol APIs as they are in native format and create all the added value capabilities within the use case application itself. So this also implies another element, which is potentially to participate in the network. So that means hosting a node. These two areas of this methodology allow for greater flexibility. Potentially, there is more time in order to integrate certain capabilities that are already built in the core services. However, it does give greater flexibility. So those two methodologies are open, and use case developers can choose either.
So we have seen in the architecture model description the different services present in the core interface and the services from the common application. We have revisited all the API in the core services that are used today in the demonstrator to make them more compliant with REST architecture reference, meaning we use now all the HTTP methods in all the APIs in terms of create, read, update, and delete methods. We have also aligned all APIs to use collections, which makes sense. We have improved them also in terms of error messages, which was not enough developed in the initial version on the current demonstrator running on the testnet. On the top layer, so this is only in the core services, you have the API. On the common application, as mentioned, you have also to your disposal different application you can already use, and that will help you for all the testing, like the Block Explorer, and also the API catalog, where we will go. We can go now. You can click on API catalog links. Yeah. So this service from the common application is the current API catalogs. From there, on the top right side, you have a list of the different APIs exposed on the core service. So here, as an example, we will take the timestamp API. So as explaining during the architecture description, each use case is reusing lower layer service. And in this case, let's take the notary use case. It's using the timestamp API. So we have defined it a generic service. Here are two endpoints for this API. So let's take the second one where we are on it. It's a get. So the purpose of this API is you give it as an argument the hash of a document that has been notarized, which means it has been anchored on a smart contract running on a ledger from the lower layer. So you see here, I use two words. So we use a smart contract, which is present on the chain and storage layer, and it's running on a specific ledger also from the lower layer. You have a description of it. You have the parameters. So you pass in parameter the hash of the document where you would like to see if it is notarized. And you see in the answer, you have a 200 answer, and you see here in the example, which is very nice, you have in the answer, you have a JSON, you have the hash of the document, if this document has been anchored. You have also the transaction hash, which is the proof of the transaction that has been done to the smart contract. You have also the timestamp, who has record, so anchor this hash, which is under the registered by. This is the public key of the entity that has registered that hash, and you have also the block number in which the transaction has been done. And then you have different error message, the classical 400 if this is a batch request format, and 404 if it has not been found. So we have this kind of swagger has been done for every white boxes you have seen on the architecture model from the core layer. So we are finishing this for the moment. An important remark, because the API catalog will be soon available for you. Those are the revisits of every API to make them REST compliant, but end of March, they are not yet connected to the test network, and this will be done we target to do it for end of April. So modifying the current test network and demonstrator to consume those new revisited APIs.
Okay, so what are the actions, therefore, that we propose for EBP members to take? Well, firstly, as we mentioned, there are all these great documents. There's the public website, there's the evangelization deck, there are the internal wikis that you can take content from in order to discuss with your member state institutions as to what benefits they could draw from the EBSI network. Another step which we're launching today is to allow and encourage the integration of test pilots with national institutions, so that institutions use case that are either already slated to use blockchain services or have particular benefit requirements that can be satisfied by the EBSI network and blockchain, can be tried and tested against the EBSI test network. As we saw earlier, we should have 26 nodes running this year. Therefore, this starts to be a level of rigidity that we can, a level of robustness rather, that we can provide a proper set of tests to a use case scenario. And then the third idea to start to the discussion with member state institutions is to demonstrate the EBSI V1 use cases. So you have seen the demonstrator already, which was launched some time back. That demonstrator continues to function as is and will be updated to all the new APIs as has been said when they are launched, target end of April. So we have there 3 activities that are concrete. In order to see what else is happening, we will also be tracking all of the different discussions that are going on about bringing applications and platforms into the EBSI network. So work with EBP members starts today with you. We have also been discussing, obviously, with the EU institutions. So there is a program which is involving several DGs to bring their use case applications to the network. And finally, technology players, the pre-commercial procurement track is currently discussing priorities for EBSI future upgrades, and this may involve end-to-end use cases. So just to give you a leaf out of the evangelization book, we have indeed put together a number of benefits and also questions that member state use case owners can ask and look at in their own use case. But at a high level, there are some very clear benefits to working with EBSI on the use case level. So these examples are very clear. There's the ability today, from today, to functionally evaluate not only EBSI, but also how the use case application works and interacts with the blockchain. There's the ability to evaluate the resources required to either build a use case application with EBSI or integrate an existing one. Obviously, as you may already know, EBSI is distributed with a no software license fee license. So all the components integrated within are open source, and the software is distributed itself as open source. Also, use case entities can start to test blockchain services. So not only within their own member state, but also cross-border blockchain services. As we mentioned, there will be something like 26 nodes this year, so they can start to understand in real life how those use cases can work cross-border as well. The work that we'll be undertaking this year to ensure the technical governance, the work we've already undertaken around regulatory and legal governance, and the whole governance of the EBP can be leveraged by member states to ensure that they have a use case that is supporting the various regulations, certainly cross-border. It also enables member states to have early access to EBSI so that all of these tests can be carried out, all of these evaluations can be carried out and could bring benefits to their use cases applications. And lastly, as was mentioned earlier, there is access to the community. So not only will you be able to interact with the EBSI team through the support team, but there is a network of member state individuals that we're encouraging to carry the discussion around so that we can develop further approaches. So, as mentioned earlier, there are these two methodologies to integrate to EBSI. The first one, as mentioned, also has these automated integration tools that will be built during 2020, and those will be things like adapt sandbox and adapt templates such that decentralized applications can be tested in a self-service mode. It will also have the capability to submit applications and smart contracts and potentially the request for specific ledgers to the EBP community and exercise them through technical governance in an automated fashion. So automated workflows, but also managed through blockchain. In essence, that will speed up the ability for integration. Although already, as has been described, we're doing a lot of work to ensure that we have industry standard APIs that can be used for integration. So therefore, the second level of core services already allows a great number of value-added functionality. So value-added meaning on top of the standard blockchain interfaces, such as the personal data wallet, self-sovereign identity, the document notarization feature. On the other hand, in the second methodology, again, increasing the amount of time and effort, but also increasing the amount of flexibility. Member state application developers could integrate directly using the blockchain protocol interfaces. The two protocols that are being launched with EBSI v1 are Ethereum Enterprise with the Hyperledger Besu client and Hyperledger Fabric. All of the methods of their interfaces are available through their appropriate APIs, all in native format, and the only additional aspects that EBSI is putting on top are the governance aspects. So in other words, ensuring that only approved applications may access and exercise on the platform. Also, there is the off-chain storage capabilities, where again we have distributed database and file systems capable. So on EBSI version 1, some of the applications are using today the distributed database. What that means is that the data is available on all of the nodes, so that any application can hit any node and have response from both the blockchain and the off-chain storage that are identical. In EBSI version 1, the distributed database is Cassandra. And the fourth area is the Participation in the network, so that means hosting an EBSI node. As several of you have already submitted to do so, we're in the process of onboarding all of you. Those that have not yet submitted to host a node and wish to can get in touch with the support team as described earlier. All that's required is the approval of the member state policy group representative. And we have all the specifications to do so. Now, one comment that is important is at the bottom that some of the core services in V1 have partial functionality. However, the relevant documentation will explain that. And another point that is relevant for the node hosting is that integrating an application is not dependent on hosting a node. So to be clear, use case applications may be integrated directly to core services. It is not a requirement to host a node in order to integrate applications. However, hosting a node has its other benefits in terms of being able to validate immediately how the resource picture is for being part of the blockchain and being able to build up those skill sets and being part of the technical governance when it is brought into place. So moving to the next slide, we can just really drill down on each of those areas. These capabilities are not automated in version 1, so in version 2 in 2021 they will be. So at the moment, all of these capabilities, so if a use case developer wishes to create a decentralized application, submit a smart contract, integrate to an API, or indeed submit some specific requirements, all of that goes through the support team as described earlier. In the next slide, we can see that the core services are described here in terms of their ultimate benefits. These reflect and are actually served as the core service APIs that were described earlier. So these are available from today. The documentation is there, whilst the APIs are connected to the test network over the month of April, and then they will be available to test against. In order to gain access to these, again, there's the support team who have the process to give you those accesses, and behind the support team there's the level 2 and level 3 developers and DevOps teams who have built the network, who will support the member state application requests. Moving to the next layer, we can see that these interfaces, as described, are the blockchain, the core blockchain interfaces or infrastructure interfaces. So the Ethereum enterprise interfaces, which are exposed through the Hyperledger Besu client, give you access to the blockchain, which is run on a proof of authority consensus algorithm based on IBFT2 and will be developed from there under the technical governance program in terms of how that consensus model evolves. Likewise, Hyperledger Fabric runs on proof of authority. In this case, it's the algorithm based on Raft. And this is also scheduled to evolve with the technical governance piece and with Fabric's own evolution. As mentioned earlier, the distributed database is Cassandra and is available through core services APIs. We have, as mentioned earlier, a storage API that gives access to all the different capabilities. And lastly, there is a distributed file system if required, which is GlusterFS. So moving on to the hosting a node, this has been described already publicly in the connectivity testing service on the CEF network webpage. So is all the capabilities are available there in terms of the minimum technical requirements needed to host a node. And the process, as always, goes through the support team, who have a very well oiled process to help member states to get a node onboarded. Important to note that nodes can be hosted on several types of virtual machine that could be local. There are also some cloud integrations, and which ones are supported will be informed to you by the support team, as this may change over time. So, are we ready to get started? The Connecting Europe Facility website can give you a startup on everything that you need. We will give you links to all the documents that we've described, and we are available for your questions through the support team or through your colleagues in the user community. We hope that this has been an informative piece and indeed that it has motivated some of you to go out and seek some use case application integration pilots or otherwise evangelize the platform within your member state. We hope to hear from you, and you will see the addresses with this presentation and on the CEF website.